Good day, guys, and welcome to another episode of Radical Dream Play, where I want to discuss with you shortcomings that I see in the financial modeling and how financial advisors describe or prescribe retirement planning to people. I see major flaws and gaps that I really feel I need to highlight. And what I want to do is I want to bring the engineering tools that we use. I have 20 years of experience in modeling and simulation of complex systems, and I want to bring the tools that we use to the financial industry now. Financial industry is something that always fascinated me, but we have nice tools that we use in the control design domain and in the engineering domain in general that I want to use to give the people a good picture. Because what I see financial advisors do is they would handle a case. They would give you a lot of the videos on social media. They would say, okay, if you're at this age saving this much, you can retire then with so much. And that is very specific to one person. Yes, mine is also going to be specific to one person, but what it does, it gives you a bigger picture. It shows you why you must withdraw, what percentage you do withdraw, not just going like the 4% is enough. That brings me to another point, and that is inflation. People, please, the CPI value that we get quoted is, remember, that is just on consumer products. It doesn't include housing and such, but that is way below many people's real inflation. If you look at your basket of products that you buy, look at your Woolies meats, on the food, the fuel. Take all those products and look at what you spent on them per month. Then go back 10, 20, 30 years. Google, find the prices of it then and calculate how much that did increase per year. And you will see you're much closer. CPI is not 4.5%, 5% currently. It's more, for me personally, it's more 8.4%. So please make sure of that, because there's also a viral video of Dave Ramsey. I don't know, guys, one must be careful. You look up to these guys when it comes to financial advice, where Dave Ramsey says, okay, you can withdraw 8%. If you have an investment growing at 12%, CPI is at 4%, there's 8% growth. You can withdraw 8% per annum, guys. I'll show you now. What I do in my modeling is I run the data through historical market data. I'm using the S&P 500, for instance, and the inflation data of the US, which is, I'm a South African, so the US inflation is quite a bit lower. I've got a plot of that as well than South African inflation. But just to demonstrate how you need to analyze these things and how important it is to know what percentage above inflation your real personal inflation is. So yes, that's the two things. Bring the picture to the people and show that inflation, I want to work on an inflation tool really before I make these tools that I have here available to everyone or publicly available. I want to create a tool that can help you calculate your inflation. So, but it will go back into history and find historical prices for you and to calculate the percentage of growth of the price. So you can just select your products. And that can then feed into a tool that I'm showing here today for you to get a big, good picture, a whole picture. And what I mean with a picture is, let me show you here. What I do is I create a contour plot. Now this is very handy. So what I took is a 65-year-old and he's planning for retirement till the age of 99. So these are the years that he starts the retirement withdrawing. So since it's a 34-year retirement plan, I can only go back up to 1990 more or less, just above that, because we only have data up to where we are currently. I think I only have data up to 2025. So we have the Great Depression here at the bottom, 1930 as a start. And what this picture now represents is you have your starting year of withdrawal versus the amount of the percentage your basket inflation is above the standard published inflation. So it's basically two independent variables that changes, and now you get the picture of how much you are covered. So what I'm plotting here, these values and these colors, is indication of how much you are covered, in the sense that you have expenses, a certain amount that we specified in the program. You can change that value to your specific expenses, and then for this case I selected the 65-year-old planning to at least have retirement up till 99 years. Expenses about 37,000. So you can now see this, the currencies doesn't matter, and he has 20 million, he or she has 20 million saved. Let's say it's rand, the expenses is 37,000 rand per month after taxes. So then you can see here in the Great Depression, it's not a good time to retire at peaks of the market. We might be in a peak now actually, because the thing is, normally we can be followed with a lost decade. They're talking about the decade where the prices remain, the stock prices don't grow, or it falls, it's oscillatory, and it might be in 10-15 years still the same price that it is today. That's the problem of a peak. If you do your planning before a peak, then you're fine, because you at least got the growth as well. So you're at the bottom of a channel. What I mean with a channel is, let's look at the S&P 500 for instance. The bottom is, for instance, the price movement of the S&P 500, and the top is the total growth of the S&P 500, including dividends as well. So if you plan retire somewhere in the bottom of a channel, like here, and here we're also in the bottom, it's a good time. You know, in 10-15 years time we're not going to be at that value anymore, whereas at the top of a channel in 10-15 years we might be still at the same price, and that hits you harder than a 50% stock crash, because a 50% stock crash, assuming a stocks grow at 10%, 10, 11, 12%, that's out of the system within six years. If it doesn't recover, like crashes normally, sometimes they recover fast, like in this instance here, and they crash and they recover fairly quickly. But you can see here is a whole decade lost here. But the 50% crash and then no normal growth will recover in less than 10 years, about 7 years. This is the picture then what I want to bring to you. Don't retire at the peak. That's the worst case. 1930, yeah, that's for instance this peak. Worst time for someone to have retired, because it took 20 odd years, 25 years or so to be at that price level again. That is just insane. That is like a 90% crash. It is very significant. So what this curve basically is, it's a cut through this. It is at 3%, so it's this one here, this cut here along. So you can see any year with a plus 3% inflation, this is the withdrawal the person can do. So he's 100% covered the whole time, meaning he can withdraw enough to cover all his expenses per month after. So you withdraw before taxes, pay the taxes, and still have enough left to cover all his expenses. So yeah, this is the tool that I've been working on. I want to make it available on a website for people. Now you can run different cases. You can tell me, okay, a younger person is 55, double the money, 40 million. Just run that case. We start from 1927, around there. Then for each year that the retirement starts, and he plays out up till 99, and he's covered more than 100%. We take that year as a successful year. We count all of those years and then divide it by the total number of years that we ran the simulation over. You can see this guy now, a 55-year-old with 40 million and 37 expenses, can even at plus 6% inflation, It's a 44-year long retirement. He's still well covered. And you can plus 1%, plus 2%, plus 3%, it's not a problem. You can see even here the dark red is still way above 100%. So this guy is always 100% covered. Okay guys, the plus 6% inflation is probably a bit too conservative. Let's have a look at the 30-year retirement plan and the 4% withdrawal rate. So the important difference to understand between withdrawal rate and covered, you can see they are very closely correlated. However, withdrawal rate, we look at more how your funds will last. Will it last your complete retirement duration? So this is more, will it last? And covered is more an indication, can you cover all your expenses with what you withdraw? So we don't normally talk about the covered. That is, I don't know if there is a proper term in the literature for this, but they always refer to withdrawal rate, and that is how much you can withdraw the first year, and then you adjust it with inflation year on after that. You can see from this graph that yes, 4%, here's small instances where it will be a problem if you did retire in those specific years. There you started your retirement then, or year again, if you started there, you might have issues with the 4%, but that is minor cases. However, if your expenses is on par with inflation, hats off to you. That must be a separate video where I will go into detail about how inflation it's a lot higher. Anything from 7.5% to 9.5% is for South Africans. In the US, it might be a lot different, but that's where we are currently for personal inflation. So yes, 8% definitely no. Not even in this case, 8% withdrawal. You're going to make it about 50% of the time. About 47.5 is what I calculated. Percent of the time you'll be fine. And you can see it's more or less 50% of the time you're fine with 8%.
4 to 5%?
No, it shouldn't be 4 to 5%. It ought to be more than that. I mean, if you're making 12 in good mutual funds and the S&P is average 11.8, and if inflation for the last 80 years has averaged 4%, if you make 12 and you need to leave 4% in there for inflation raises, that leaves you 8. So I'm perfectly comfortable drawing 8. But if you want to be a little bit conservative, 7, but sure not 5 or 3.
And that's the thing about averages. If you say the S&P, and I've checked this, what Dave Ramsey said is taking the mean is perfectly, it works out. Like if you take the mean of the S&P and you subtract the mean of the US inflation, if I run this line, yes, you can, then it looks like you have a real return of 8.6%. Because the mean here is 11.7 more or less for my data over this since 1928 till 2025, and the inflation is about 3 point something, just over 3%. And then yes, so now it seems, oh okay, well, you can withdraw 8%. But that's the thing about the mean, guys. It's the mean. 50% of the people will be lucky enough because they do it in the right time in the channel of the markets. And let me show you. So here's two cases when you're in the top of the channel and versus at the bottom. Someone over a 30-year period, right? You can retire from either of these cases. And then I want to show what is the best and the worst case 30-year returns that you can get from the S&P 500. Well, someone can be lucky enough to get 15.8% per annum in the S&P 500 over their 30-year retirement period. It is possible. It's completely possible. An unlucky guy can get only 6.7%. So it's all about these cycles. So 50% on a volatile thing means 50% can make it and 50% won't make it. And that's and we don't want to leave a 50% probability of you running out of retirement funds. That's the whole point. So this dotted green line is just for illustrative purposes. If you started with the same amount of money there, and what this difference in red and green can be. But it will be now for different times in the historical market data that one invested these funds. But this is a factor of 11.6 times. It's more than a factor 10. You can see here a factor 10 would be from that line to this line. It's just over it, so it's a factor 11.6 times more money that you, well, from an investment point of view, over 30 years in something like the S&P 500, one can have a factor 11.6 times more. So this final value here is about $21,000. This one is around 244,000 USD. And so it's all about where do you retire at the top of the cycle or in the bottom. Always better in the bottom. You leave more space for growth. So how I run this, I have a function that evaluates it for you. So it will take the capital that you have invested. It will calculate the withdrawal rate based on the money lasting till you're 99 years. So whatever that withdrawal rate would be for it to last. So that will determine if you are 100% covered, 120% covered. And then the inflation here is the standard US inflation plus then that offset that I add for personal inflation, and then the growth of the equity or the funds that it's invested in. And then I just loop through it, and as your shares diminish or gets depleted, I calculate that and update the withdrawal rate with inflation every year and the amount as well. And that then just iteratively go through until your capital is no longer more than what you're going to withdraw that year. So another thing that's interesting from this chart is you'll see that the total return of the S&P, I feel that's more important. I feel that is the value that investors get out of the S&P 500. Don't just look at the price. A lot of people look at the price, it's now here at $7,000. But in reality, if you reinvested the whole time, per share, its value for you would be at this time be $200,000 US. And I think that is what investors care about, the total return, not just the price movement. The dividends are very important. I mean, the S&P pays out from 2 at the lowest, but I've seen a lot of the years with 3-4% dividends, and it even went up to like over a 7% dividends that it paid out per year. So that makes a big difference between the price and the S&P, the total returns. So for this analysis that I've done, I've used total returns as an input to the equity growth. And so these straight lines that I drew, the channels, they are around 11.7%. I had to make them. So this is a logarithmic plot. So as your investment grows, compounded every year, you need to plot it logarithmically to see it grows in a straight line with time. Because a higher value will grow with a larger amount for the same percentage than a low value. So if you plot this price on a regular plot, like these fearmongers like to do, you'll always see, we're gonna crash now. Look at the price. But guys, if you zoom in on any time on this graph, it will always look scary. Even if I zoom in here where it seems flat. I didn't do that now nicely. again, you'll see, it's running away there. Just move it a bit so very, yeah, it's scary, man. Yo, look at that. It just runs away there. It's better to look on a logarithmic plot. Okay, so this is, for instance, the US inflation per annum, the red line, and for instance, South Africa in yellow. South Africa inflation is quite a bit higher. So another reason to do all these plus percentages. US inflation, you can see it's going through these oscillatory 10-year average. Might go up here again, it seems. Don't know. I don't know. I'm not saying anything. We can run a case. If you're 65, 15 million. So as you can see, I plot the probabilities of successful plans as the simulation runs, and then I create the total contour. See, this doesn't look too good for this person. There's even 60% covered areas now. But look here. Let's say his inflation is plus 4%, which is easily possible. Then if you retire here, 1973 was a big crash. So you see, that's not the problem, retiring in the crash. It's not the big problem. The big problem is retiring at the peak before the crash. Meaning you plan to have, you think you have enough money. Depends on what the market does. So if we're at the bottom of a channel, you are safer. These high periods are when we're in the bottom of a channel. These low periods are when we are at the top of the channel. So it's like inversely how much you can withdraw. But you see here we are below 3% withdrawal rate, for instance, for someone that's 65 years old. And to tell them 4% in this period would have been a big misconception. It would have been a lie, really. So yes, they can withdraw up to 7% if they retired in those periods. Okay, I hope that helped. I hope that gave you some clarity, because it's all about the real return using the Fischer equation. This is 0 here, so there it goes, up to 15% real return. That is massive, guys. 10% real return. That is the amount that your investment grows above inflation. And in South Africa seems to be slightly less, actually. It's more here at 4 and less percent real return. It seems to be growing a bit currently, but that might be the weakening of the dollar. Thanks, guys. That's all I wanted to share. I hope that helps. Let me know if you want to have me develop an inflation calculator. I think that can be of great value. How can I share these tools? I'll think about that. I am busy creating a financial planning website as well. So maybe I can incorporate these to give the capability of doing contour plots to you guys on a browser. I think that would help a lot. It would give you a picture. I want to give the people a picture rather than running a single point analysis. Thanks for watching another episode of Radical Dream Play, guys. Enjoy. Till next time.